In recent times, I've had a lot of questions by guys asking me if I can't get to the Philippines, then where can I meet my Filipina girlfriend outside of the Philippines during COVID? So I did a bit of research around this and found this website from the New York Times where they've got a whole heap of countries listed where you can go in either with no restrictions or with limited type of restrictions, anywhere from being vaccinated to having a negative test and so on. And I'll go through those four countries that have no restrictions at all for US citizens, but it also seems that many of these countries may also be open to many other countries around the world. But that's for you to do your research. I don't know a lot about this, but what I'm giving you is some information so you can follow up and do your own research and find out the facts around if it's possible for you to go to these countries and for your Filipina to get to these countries to meet you, which can be a whole other problem in itself. So again, I'll give you this information that I've found online for you to follow up and do your research to see if it's viable. And to be honest with you, I'm not even sure if they're allowing Filipinas out of the Philippines at this stage, or if countries are accepting Filipinas into their countries at this stage. So that's your job to find this out. Now, personally, would I be going to these countries at the moment, hoping that I can get my Filipina in there and paying out airline tickets and accommodation fees in advance, hoping that nothing goes wrong? No, I wouldn't be doing that. So if you're going to do that, that's your choice and you're free to do so. But I'm not recommending it. I'm just passing on this information to you. So as we can see on this article from the New York Times, which, by the way, was posted on the 1st of July 2021. I'm a US citizen. Where in the world can I go? For Americans eager to resume international travel, here are the countries that currently allow US citizens to enter, though there may be some restrictions, including vaccine requirements. And as I say, this may apply to other countries as well, not just the US. So as we scroll down now, there's a huge list here that I'm not going to go through every single country with you. As you can see, if we scroll down, it's just a mountain of countries that are open in some degree to welcoming foreign tourists inside. But there are some countries that I'd like to point out to you that you may find interesting and rather easy to get into. Now, I'll start with some with limited restrictions, and they are fairly limited. As you can see, some have got some major sort of restrictions there. Now, these countries may not be up everyone's alley, but I'm sure that some of these countries may appeal to some of you guys if that's the way you want to go. So we'll start off with Chad. Entry by air is permitted, with those 11 and older required to present a negative PCR taken in the 72 hours before arrival. Visitors staying longer than a week must be retested at a hospital for $30. So that's fairly relaxed restrictions. Just a PCR test taken in 72 hours before the arrival, and you'll have to get another test at the hospital for $30 if you're staying longer than a week. And the next one is Costa Rica. The country is open with no testing and no quarantine mandate. However, mandatory insurance that covers medical and other expenses related to coronavirus is required. So no testing, no quarantine, but medical insurance is a must. Then right under that, we've got the Ivory Coast. US citizens are allowed to enter and leave by air with a negative PCR test dated within 5 days of arrival and departure. Now, I'm not sure if that's for any other countries apart from the US, but there it's saying US citizens, so we can assume it's just for the US. And I know a lot of you guys who have been asking these questions are from the US. Now, before we go on, I will put a link to this website in the description below so you can have a look at it in your own leisure. And what we need to be aware of here, this is for people going to these countries. As I said earlier, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be able to get your Filipina in there. You might be able to get in there, but whether or not she can, that's for you to do your research. And maybe Philippines embassy or the country you're going to, check with their embassy and so on. There's a lot involved in this, guys. It's not as simple as it sounds, and there's a lot to think about. So anyway, if you want to go into Greece, fully vaccinated tourists 2 weeks from their last shot can enter without restrictions. So you need to have had your full vaccinations, that's the 2 doses, within 2 weeks from your last shot, as can those who show proof of having recovered from COVID-19 infection in the previous 2 to 9 months. Other visitors 5 and older need a negative test taken 72 hours before arrival. And some passengers will be subject to a rapid test at airports. And then there's Haiti. Travelers must have a negative coronavirus test for entry. The US Embassy in Haiti doesn't provide additional details on its website. So at this stage, it looks like they just need a negative coronavirus test and you're allowed in if you're from the US. Again, if it allows Filipinos in there, I'm not sure. And guys, we've also got to remember that these travel restrictions can change day to day. Countries will have one rule today and they'll change it tomorrow. They may have a country on their green list today and they'll change that tomorrow. So you've always got to be updated. And what if you purchase your tickets today to fly out next week or next fortnight and then everything's changed by then? What happens to your tickets? Do you get a refund? Do you get a credit? Do you lose out altogether? They're the possibilities you've got to think about. And the last one I'll go through on the limited restrictions list that I've got here is Honduras. Fully vaccinated tourists are not required to have a pre-test, but others must have proof of negative PCR or rapid test taken in the previous 72 hours. Those who had contact in the previous 2 weeks with a confirmed case or who have traveled to a country with confirmed cases may be isolated for up to 14 days. So now I'll show you the countries with no restrictions at all. So basically you can just fly on in there if you're from the US, and possibly these are the countries you may want to see if you can get your Filipina into as well, if that's what you're looking to do. So we'll start off with Colombia. Americans are allowed to enter without restriction according to the US Embassy in Colombia. So again, whether or not you can get a Filipina in there or not, it doesn't look likely, but it's something that may change or you may be able to follow up yourself. Now, this is one that may be a real possibility for all those guys in America that have been asking, and that is Mexico. And it's been this way for some time, where it says land crossings between the US and Mexico remain closed. US visitors can arrive by plane without testing or quarantine requirement. So pretty much you can just fly on in there if you're an American citizen, and again, check if you can get your Filipina in there if that's the way you want to go. This is simply giving you guys some ideas to follow up on yourself. And the Netherlands, as of June 24, there are no travel restrictions for visitors from the United States. And the last one with no restrictions is Romania. There are no travel restrictions according to a Romanian tourism website. So does that actually mean that you could bring a Filipina in there? I don't know. Again, I really don't know, guys. Now, I know a lot of you guys are really keen to be with your Filipinas or your wives who are still in the Philippines, and you've been separated for some time because of COVID. So I really get the urgency that you want to be together, but I'm not really sure that this is the way to go about it at this point in time. There's so many unknowns, so many things can change. You could get wrong information from even the embassies, or they give you the correct information at that time and it changes. You get to airports, or your Filipina gets to the airport, she gets held up, she gets told she can't go. There's a lot that can happen around this. I certainly think it's a much safer bet just to wait a little bit longer. I've said it for 8 or 9 months now that I believe the Philippines will open up at the end of this year in time for Christmas, and I'm still leaning towards that way. I'm not 100% confident on it. No one knows what's going to happen. But certainly I'm cautiously optimistic on that. Still at this stage, we're still looking 5 months away. And certainly it seems a lot will depend on who's vaccinated and coming in and how much of the country in the Philippines has been vaccinated and whether or not they may get close or have herd immunity at that time. I think there's a lot of factors there. The Philippines seems to think it's possible to get herd immunity by the end of this year or early next year. which I'm also going to do a video on shortly. But I hear some guys saying, no, the Philippines won't be opening until 2023 and all this. I think they're off the mark. Personally, I think they're off the mark. I do still think the end of this year, or at the very latest in the first quarter of 2022, at the very latest. But anyway, if you're one of these guys who want to meet your Filipina in another country before the Philippines reopens, then certainly drop us a line in the comments and tell us about where you want to meet your Filipina. And if you certainly know any countries that are opened for you as a foreign tourist, and also where you can get your Filipina in there, then let us know. But I do think that even a Filipina being allowed out of the Philippines at the moment may be a difficult proposition. That's just my opinion. I'm not an expert on that, but I'd certainly like to hear from you guys who may have more information around that. So if you can pop your comments below, that'd be appreciated. Thanks for watching, guys. Stay safe and take care, and I'll see you in the next video.